New York's housing market has always been tough, but in 2025, it has become a minefield. The top 10 worst cities to buy a home in New York is not just a list, it's a warning. Brooklyn foreclosures are up 36%. The Bronx just saw a 73% spike, and even so-called safe suburbs like Guilderland now rank among the nation's most overvalued markets. Incomes cannot keep up, and some areas are now flagged as high risk, even at 0% mortgage rates. If you think your city is immune, think again. What hidden dangers are pushing these markets to the brink, and could your next address be a costly mistake? Even with mortgage rates scraping rock bottom, the New York metro housing market remains out of reach for most buyers. Market analysts rank the region among the most overvalued in the nation, and the numbers paint a stark picture. Affordability gaps persist even if you could borrow at 0% interest. According to MarketWatch, the city's entire metro area holds steady near the top of national overvaluation lists, with homes routinely priced well beyond what average incomes can support. Investopedia's 2025 analysis echoes the same risk, pointing to underwater mortgages making a comeback in pockets once thought immune. That means more homeowners now owe more on their properties than those homes are worth, an alarming return to a pattern not seen since the last housing crisis. Experts warn, even with every financial lever pulled, the math just doesn't add up for ordinary families. Expensive listings linger, incomes lag, and cost burdens climb. Even the prospect of a near-free loan wouldn't bridge the gap between what homes cost and what buyers actually earn. In this environment, the very concept of homeownership has shifted from American ideal to a high-wire act, where even the smallest stumble can tip households into the red. Adam analysts are sounding alarms for New York's commuter belt, but not for the reasons you might expect. Westchester and Rockland counties, long considered safe havens for white-collar commuters, are now flagged for hidden financial strain, just beneath their postcard-perfect surfaces. The latest Adam County risk data shows that local debt-to-income ratios are blowing past conventional safety thresholds, squeezing buyers even before they walk through the front door. In Westchester, the median home price hit $821,000 by May 2024, while a typical four-person household needs to clear $170,000 a year just to keep up. Meanwhile, rents have soared to $5,500 for a three-bedroom, making it one of the costliest rental markets in the nation. Over in Rockland, the median sale price jumped to $692,764 this summer, with 59% of homes selling above asking price and 73% of listings snapped up in under a month. On paper, foreclosure numbers look modest, 84 in Westchester and just 36 in Rockland for the most recent reporting period. But that's not the whole story. Affordability is collapsing faster than distress metrics can keep up. Adam's risk methodology flags these counties for credit risk, not because of a foreclosure wave, but because household budgets are stretched to the breaking point. Local buyers are routinely spending well over a third of their income on housing, and that leaves little margin for error if the regional economy hiccups. In the race for a suburban life near the city, the cost has quietly outpaced the reward. That's the new commuter belt reality. Plenty of risk, even if you don't see it on a foreclosure map yet. Guilderland, an Albany suburb once known for steady growth and open lawns, has become ground zero for New York's suburban squeeze. In 2025, buyers face a stark new reality. A median home price of $395,500, up 15% from last year, according to Rocket Homes. That's not just a bump. It's a surge that's pricing out families who dreamed of a fresh start outside the city. Homes here don't linger. 93% sell within 30 days, with 70% going above asking price. The supply crunch is relentless. In June, there were only 96 homes on the market, less than 1 month's worth of listings at current sales rates. Capital Region agents report buyers lining up the first weekend, sometimes offering 5 figures over list just to have a shot. New construction isn't riding to the rescue. Guilderland's building moratorium blocks any new project over 5 single-family lots or 25 apartments, and similar zoning restrictions ripple through Albany's suburbs, freezing out multifamily and affordable builds. Even as Albany County's median price soared to $352,500 this summer, an 8.8% jump, inventory fell by nearly 13%. For first-timers and essential workers, options are thin. The average home in Albany goes pending in 9 days. Sellers call the shots, buyers face bidding wars, and the old promise of the affordable upstate starter home feels like a relic. In 2025, the boom has flipped the script, locking out newcomers and rewarding anyone lucky enough to get in before the door slammed shut. Binghamton, a city once fueled by the hum of factories, now stands as a cautionary tale of what happens when industry fades and little replaces it. Since 2000, over 40% of Binghamton's manufacturing jobs have disappeared, an exodus that left whole neighborhoods searching for purpose and paychecks. The numbers tell the story. Factories that once anchored the local economy have either shuttered or downsized, slashing payrolls and sending ripples through every diner, hardware store, and corner market in town. Population trends mirror the job losses. The city's headcount has been stuck in neutral for years, hovering just above 47,000, even as other upstate cities saw at least modest gains. Census data shows Binghamton losing nearly 10,000 residents between 1990 and 2020, with more families packing up than putting down roots. For longtime homeowners, this means a parade of empty houses and a shrinking tax base, making it tougher for the city to pave roads, keep the lights on, or maintain schools. The pressure shows up in the real estate market. Houses that once promised middle-class stability now linger unsold, often needing repairs that buyers can't or won't take on. With fewer new jobs, demand stays weak. Many owners who plan to retire on their home's value now find themselves holding on to aging properties as equity slips away. According to Frank Albert Realty, Binghamton's median home price has barely budged in a decade, frequently falling behind inflation, while maintenance costs continue to climb with each passing winter. This economic drag doesn't just affect property values. Local shops, already thinly spread, close up as foot traffic dwindles. School districts trim budgets, and city services operate on shoestring funds. The optimism that once accompanied factory whistles has given way to a quiet endurance. As Binghamton's homeowners watch the numbers year after year and wonder if things will ever bounce back. The city's struggle shows what happens when the pillars of an economy crack, and what it means for anyone thinking about planting roots here in 2025. Elmira, in the southern tier, sits squarely in the crosshairs of demographic decline and environmental risk. Over the past decade, the city lost more than 7% of its population, dropping from 29,200 in 2010 to just 26,523 by 2020. That shrinking tax base makes it harder to keep up city services, but the real shock comes every time the Chemung River swells. Elmira has lived with the memory of disaster since the catastrophic 1972 floods, when a wall of water forced out over 15,000 people and damaged thousands of homes. Decades later, the threat hasn't faded. Post-1972 levees and flood walls offer some protection, but new patterns of severe weather and aging infrastructure mean the risk remains stubbornly high. In 2013, flash floods swept through Chemung County, inundating dozens of homes. Even a single night of heavy rain can send water creeping across low-lying neighborhoods. The city's housing stock compounds the danger. According to census records, over 90% of Elmira's homes were built before 1950, many predating modern flood-resistant codes. That means block after block of wood frame houses with decades of deferred maintenance, places where a flooded basement or rotted foundation can erase what little equity remains. A median housing age of 65 years puts Elmira among the oldest small metros in the country. For residents, every storm brings the risk of costly repairs on properties already strained by time and tight budgets. Insurance can offset some losses, but rates climb each year, and many owners discover too late that standard policies don't fully cover flood damage. Population loss only makes recovery harder. With fewer people left to share the burden, abandoned homes multiply, dragging down neighboring property values and choking off new investment. In some Elmira neighborhoods, vacancy and blight follow every major flood, creating a cycle that's tough to break. For homebuyers, that adds up to a risky proposition. A shrinking city, aging houses, and the ever-present possibility that the next big storm will leave entire blocks underwater. In Elmira, the risks aren't hidden, they're mapped, measured, and all too familiar for those who call this floodplain home. Queens stands out in 2025 for what isn't happening as much as what is. Foreclosure filings have dropped about 20% from last year, a rare improvement in a city filled with red flags. But beneath that surface, the warning signs are anything but subtle. Median days on market have doubled, now sitting at 60, twice as long as last year. In places like Laurelton, sellers are slashing prices by an average of 5% just to get a bite. That's not the sign of a healthy market, it's the sound of the brakes screeching at every open house. On paper, Queens looks like it's dodging the worst of the storm. Fewer filings, less panic. At first glance, it's a relief. But Adams' risk index refuses to put away the caution tape. Queens still lands among the most vulnerable U.S. counties flagged for market downturn, especially when you zoom out to credit risk, underwater mortgages, and affordability. The borough's middle-class backbone is feeling the squeeze, with many homeowners stuck between shrinking equity and rising debt. For families who stretch to buy at the top, every month a house sits unsold means more financial pressure, more tough decisions. So, while buyers might see a slowdown and think the worst has passed, the real trouble in Queens is more like a slow leak than a sudden blowout. Improvement on the surface can hide a market quietly shifting beneath, where cracks in affordability and credit run far deeper than the drop in foreclosure numbers suggests. In Manhattan's luxury corridors, those glossy towers and gold-plated co-ops are not escaping the stress. Even in 10022, the zip code that runs from Park Avenue penthouses to glass-walled condos, foreclosures are climbing, up 15% compared to last year. That is not a rounding error for a few unlucky owners. It is a sign that the high end is feeling the pinch. Inventory tells the story. The number of luxury condos on the market has doubled since 2023, crowding the field with options that, not too long ago, would have sparked bidding wars. Now properties that once spent weeks on the market are sitting for months, with sellers quietly dropping their asking prices just to attract a tour. According to the latest New York Post report, the average co-op maintenance fee in Manhattan has jumped another 8% in the past year, putting even more strain on owners who already shell out thousands every month before they ever touch their mortgage payment. The old playbook relied on foreign buyers, cash-rich investors from abroad soaking up surplus inventory. But that tide has pulled back. International demand has slowed as capital controls, global uncertainty, and a strong dollar make Manhattan less of a safe haven. Suddenly, even trophy properties are lingering, and owners who over-leveraged during the last market peak are finding themselves on shaky ground. For all the glitz, the cracks are showing. The luxury segment was always supposed to be bulletproof, a fortress in the clouds, immune to the city's ups and downs. But in 2025, even the most exclusive addresses are flashing warning lights. In this market, not even a doorman can keep financial trouble from slipping past the velvet rope. Staten Island, often billed as New York's suburban safe harbor, is flashing warning signs of its own in 2025. Foreclosure filings here just jumped 25% compared to last year, a rate usually reserved for more volatile boroughs. That's not just a blip. It's the largest annual spike in Staten Island since the aftermath of the Great Recession, and the story cuts right through the neighborhoods of Mid-Island and the North Shore. Small-scale landlords are feeling the squeeze. Two-family homes led the pack for defaults, with more than 50 properties entering pre-foreclosure in just a few months. Many owned by residents who depend on rental income to cover rising costs. For years, these owners counted on steady tenants and a predictable path to equity. But as expenses balloon and rental markets soften, cracks are showing in the math that once made these investments seem bulletproof. Unlike other boroughs where high-rise condos or rent-stabilized apartments dominate the headlines, it's the classic brick duplex or Cape Cod split level that's now at risk. Owners who bought at the height of the market, banking on stable property values and solid rent rolls, are now watching equity drain away. Meanwhile, new buyers face mortgage payments and tax bills that have climbed out of reach, even as for sale signs linger longer than usual. Local real estate agents report a noticeable uptick in distressed listings, especially among longtime owners struggling to keep up with repairs, taxes, and insurance. The result is a slow but steady pipeline of pre-foreclosures feeding into the market, a pipeline that used to barely register on Staten Island's radar. The message is clear. The island's reputation as a shelter from citywide housing storms doesn't hold up in 2025. Rising defaults are a wake-up call that no borough is truly immune, not even the one most associated with middle-class stability and tight-knit neighborhoods. For anyone still clinging to the idea of Staten Island as New York's last housing stronghold, the numbers tell a different story. South Bronx homeowners are facing a crisis that's hitting harder than anywhere else in New York. Foreclosure filings across the borough soared 73% in the second quarter of 2025, the sharpest jump citywide. That number isn't just a spike, it's a warning siren for a community already living with some of the highest poverty rates in the country. More than 1 in 3 South Bronx residents lives below the poverty line. In neighborhoods like Mott Haven and Hunts Point, that rate climbs even higher, leaving families stretched to cover basic bills, let alone a mortgage. The roots of this emergency run deep. The borough's median household income lags far behind the city average, hovering around $49,000, less than half of what's needed to comfortably afford the current cost of living here. Rents have climbed 7.9% in the past year, with average prices closing in on $2,400, while incomes barely budge. Even those who manage to buy into the dream of ownership now face mounting costs they can't outrun. Property taxes, utilities, and maintenance add up fast, especially in aging buildings that need constant repair. Nowhere is the strain more visible than in the borough's iconic co-op buildings. Many South Bronx co-ops, once seen as a path to stability for working families, are now buckling under the weight of unpaid maintenance fees. In some complexes, dozens of owners are behind on payments, pushing boards to levy special assessments that few can afford. When just a handful fall behind, the financial health of the entire building is at risk. That leads to deferred repairs, cutbacks in essential services, and a downward spiral that ends with foreclosure notices tacked to lobby doors. For older residents and families on fixed incomes, the choices are brutal. Pay for medicine or keep up on maintenance. Cover the electric bill or risk losing a home built over decades. As the foreclosure pipeline fills, stories of neighbors losing homes they've owned for generations are becoming commonplace. These aren't just numbers. They're the unraveling of community lifelines in a borough where the margin for error was already razor thin. In 2025, the story of the South Bronx isn't just about homes lost. It's about the relentless pressure of poverty, the cracks in a fragile housing system, and the human cost when every safety net fails at once. Number 1. Brooklyn, specifically Canarsie and East Flatbush. In 2025, this zip code, 11236, has become the epicenter of New York's foreclosure crisis. The numbers are staggering. Foreclosure filings in Brooklyn jumped by 36% year over year, but nowhere is the fallout more intense than here. Canarsie alone logged 17 new cases in just one reporting period. That's more than any other Brooklyn neighborhood, and it's not just a fluke. It's a pattern that's getting worse by the month. The pain is landing hardest on small landlords and owner-occupiers in two-family homes. These buildings make up 37% of all defaults in Brooklyn, by far the largest share citywide. For many, the math unraveled fast. Mortgage resets sent monthly payments soaring, while property tax assessments kept climbing. Rental income, once a safety net, no longer covers the gap as vacancies rise and tenants fall behind. Suddenly, homeowners are watching equity vanish, forced to choose between patching a leaky roof and making their mortgage payment. Median sale prices near $1 million should have been a sign of security, but affordability has run off a cliff. Home values now outpace local incomes by 25%, according to the latest MarketWatch and Narada data. That gulf means even families earning six figures can't keep up. The result? A wave of distressed listings, pre-foreclosures, and court auctions. It's not just an investment setback. It's the unraveling of generational wealth in communities that already weathered decades of financial headwinds. On the ground, the impact is everywhere. For every two-family house with a fresh for sale sign, there's another entering the court docket, often after the owner tries, and fails, to renegotiate their loan. Banks aren't the only ones circling. Cash investors, some from out of state, are snapping up properties at a discount. That puts longtime residents at risk of being replaced overnight, fueling anxiety about the future of these neighborhoods. So, what do you get when you mix runaway prices, underwater mortgages, and a tidal wave of foreclosures, all in the heart of Brooklyn? This isn't just a downturn. For Canarsie and East Flatbush, 2025 is the year the housing market safety net snapped, and nobody's been able to stitch it back together. In 2025, Brooklyn's foreclosure filings surged by 36%, with Canarsie's zip code 11236 leading citywide distress, while the Bronx saw a 73% spike, the sharpest rise anywhere in New York City. These numbers, from sources like the New York Post and Finger Lakes One, confirm that housing pressures are no longer confined to shrinking upstate towns or high-cost boroughs alone. Adams County-level data flags risk not just across the city, but in Westchester, Rockland, and key Capital Region suburbs, where some prices rose up to 16% despite critically low supply. Yet, what remains unknown is how quickly underwater mortgages and affordability gaps may worsen if economic conditions shift further. The available records detail clear cause and effect. Sustained overvaluation and mounting financial strain are affecting buyers from Manhattan luxury towers to Elmira's flood-prone neighborhoods. The evidence leaves little doubt. New York's housing risks in 2025 are widespread, sharply uneven, and according to current data, unlikely to resolve soon.